My son's medication was waiting at the pharmacy when my card declined. My husband texted, "Don't freak out." Then I saw $3,000 missing from his treatment account. He needed to feel like he mattered, my husband said. So I drove home, packed his bag, and protected what was left. The woman behind the counter lowered her voice and said, "Do you want me to run it again?" I nodded, even though my stomach was already tightening. She ran it again. Declined. My son, Joshua, was waiting in the car. He had already spent half the afternoon in a clinic room, tired and trying to act like he wasn't in pain. He does that a lot. He gets quiet instead of complaining. He smiles when I ask if he's okay because he hates making me worry. The medication in that paper bag wasn't optional. Joshua has a chronic condition that needs regular treatment, follow-ups, and medication. I won't give every detail because he deserves privacy, but missing care doesn't just mean he feels bad for a day. It can set him back for weeks. I opened my banking app with shaky fingers. The account should have had a little over $5,000 in it. That money was not vacation money. It was not grocery money. It was not emergency spending for the whole family. It was Joshua's medical account. I had built it slowly, one deposit at a time. Sometimes from extra work. Sometimes from money I should have spent on myself. Sometimes from canceling things and telling myself I didn't need them anyway. When the screen loaded, the balance was under $2,000. For a second, my brain refused to accept it. Then I saw the transactions. $2,400 withdrawn. $600 withdrawn. A charge at a sporting goods store. Gas. Food. Another charge near a place I didn't recognize. My hands went cold. I called my husband, Daniel. He didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. Then I texted him. "Why is money missing from Joshua's account?" The typing bubbles appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Then finally, he wrote back. "Don't freak out. I was going to tell you." I stood there with my son's medication sitting behind the counter, and something inside me dropped so fast I felt dizzy. The pharmacy worker said, "Ma'am." I forced myself to look up. "I'm sorry," I said. "Can I pay for part of it and come back for the rest?" She gave me that quiet look people give you when they know they're seeing the edge of a private disaster. Of course. I paid for what I could from my regular checking account. Not all of it. Just enough to get through a few days. When I got back to the car, Joshua looked at the small bag in my hand. "That's it." I lied. They had to order the rest. He nodded like that made sense. The drive home felt longer than usual. Joshua talked softly about a video he wanted to show me later. I answered in the right places. I even laughed once because he looked over after making a joke and I didn't want him to know anything was wrong. But inside, I was counting. The treatment appointment Friday. The remaining medication. The clinic balance. The money that had taken months to build. Gone. Not all of it, but enough to make the week dangerous. When we got home, Daniel's truck wasn't in the driveway. I got Joshua settled on the couch with a blanket, water, and the medicine I had managed to buy. Then I went to the kitchen, opened my laptop, and pulled up every transaction. I printed the statement. I needed something physical in my hand. Something I could put in front of Daniel so he couldn't talk around it. The account had always been mine. Daniel only had access because after we got married, he said it made sense. "What if something happens and you're not home?" he had said. "What if Joshua needs something and I'm the one available?" At the time, it sounded responsible. Now it felt like a door I had unlocked without realizing what I was letting in. Daniel came home just after 7. He walked in carrying his keys and a fast food cup, like it was any normal night. Then he saw me at the table. He stopped. He didn't ask what was wrong. That confirmed it. I slid the statement across the table. "What is this?" Daniel looked at it, then at me. "Rebecca, before you get upset, just listen." "No," I said. "You talk first." "What did you do?" He exhaled like I had already made the conversation difficult. "Connor's been struggling." Connor is Daniel's son. He's 15. He lives mostly with his mom, Diane, but he stays with us on weekends and some school breaks. I care about Connor. I've gone to his games. I've bought the snacks he likes. I've tried to give him space when he clearly didn't want another adult trying too hard. I never expected him to call me mom. I never wanted to replace anyone. But Connor has always been sensitive about Joshua's medical needs. Not because he's a bad kid. Because he's a kid. When Joshua had flare-ups, plans changed. When Joshua had appointments, the house revolved around timing and medication. When Joshua needed rest, Daniel would sometimes say, "We can't do that this weekend," and Connor would hear, "Joshua matters more." I told Daniel more than once that he needed to spend one-on-one time with Connor. Not expensive time. Just time. Breakfast. A game. A drive. Anything. Daniel always said he would. Then he got busy. And somehow, the distance he created became something I was expected to fix. Daniel rubbed his face and said, Diane promised him a dirt bike. I stared at him. What? She promised him months ago. Then she backed out. Again. He was crushed. I looked at the statement. My voice came out flat. You used Joshua's treatment money to buy Connor a dirt bike. Daniel's jaw tightened. It was used. It was a good deal. It came with gear. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because my brain couldn't believe he was explaining the bargain. How much? He didn't answer. How much, Daniel? Just under $3,000. I gripped the edge of the table. Just under $3,000. I was going to replace it. When? My next couple checks. Joshua has treatment Friday. We can reschedule. That word hit harder than the money. We. Like Daniel had ever been the one calling insurance. Like he had sat in parking lots trying to pull himself together before going inside so Joshua wouldn't see. Like he had rubbed Joshua's back at 2 in the morning while my son whispered that he hated his body. I said, there is no we in this when you stole the money that pays for it. Daniel's face changed. I didn't steal. You took money without asking from an account you knew was for Joshua's care. I borrowed it. You hid it. I was going to tell you. No, you were going to hope I didn't notice until you had a story ready. He put his cup down too hard. It wasn't for me. I didn't blow it on drinking or gambling. I bought something for my son. And you took it from mine. He needed to feel like he mattered. Joshua needs medical care. Daniel looked me straight in the face and said, he's not dying. Everything in me went still. I heard the refrigerator humming. I heard Joshua shifting on the couch in the next room. I heard my own heartbeat, slow and heavy. He's not dying, I repeated. Daniel looked away. I just mean it wasn't an emergency. I walked past him into the bedroom and pulled his duffel bag from the closet. He followed me. What are you doing? I opened the drawer and started putting his clothes into the bag. You're leaving. Rebecca, stop. You are not sleeping in this house tonight. You're kicking me out over one mistake? I turned around. No. I'm kicking you out because my son's health became negotiable to you. His mouth opened, then closed. I zipped the bag and pushed it toward him. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. For years, I had been the one smoothing things over. I was careful with tone, careful with timing, careful not to make Daniel feel accused. I explained Joshua's needs gently. I defended Connor's feelings. I tried to build a family out of pieces that didn't always fit cleanly. That night, I was done being careful. Daniel picked up the bag. When he walked through the living room, Joshua looked up from the couch. Where are you going? Daniel paused. I waited for him to say something kind. Something normal. Something that didn't drag Joshua into it. Instead, he said, ask your mom. I stepped between them. Go. Daniel looked at me one last time, then left. As soon as the door closed, Joshua's face changed. What happened? I sat beside him. Adult problem. Not yours. Is it because of me? No. He looked at the small pharmacy bag on the table. I hated that he noticed. Mom. I touched his hair. It is not because of you. He didn't look convinced. That night, after Joshua went to bed, I called my sister Laura. I barely got 3 sentences out before my voice cracked. She didn't ask me if I was sure. She didn't say maybe Daniel meant well. She didn't tell me to calm down. She said, how much do you need for Friday? I said I didn't want to borrow from her. She said, Rebecca. How much? That made me cry harder. Laura transferred enough to cover the appointment and the medication I couldn't pick up. I promised I'd pay her back. She told me to worry about that later. Then the text started. Daniel first. You humiliated me in front of Joshua. Then another. Connor is devastated. Then another. You made this about you. I stared at the phone. Connor? I hadn't spoken to Connor. He wasn't even at the house that night. Then my phone buzzed with a message from him. I know you hate me. Dad told me you're making him return the bike because you only care about your real kid. I read it 3 times. My stomach twisted. I called Daniel immediately. He answered on the 4th ring. What did you tell Connor? Daniel sounded tired. I didn't tell him anything that wasn't true. You told a 15-year-old I hate him? I told him you were angry about the bike. You told him I was making you return it? You are. I'm angry because you took from Joshua's medical account. Daniel went quiet. I said, did you tell him that part? No answer. Of course he hadn't. Because if Connor knew where the money came from, the story would change. Daniel wouldn't be the desperate father trying to make his son feel loved. He would be the adult who used one child's medical fund to avoid disappointing the other. I hung up. Then I wrote Connor a message. I care about you. What happened with the bike is between the adults. You should not have been put in the middle. I am sorry you were. I wanted to explain everything. But he was 15. He was already hurt. I didn't want to make him carry the truth just to clear my name. He didn't reply. The next morning, I took Joshua to school late because he had a rough start. His face was pale, and he moved slowly getting out of the car. Before he closed the door, he asked, "Are you and Daniel getting divorced?" I gripped the steering wheel. I don't know. Is he mad because I'm expensive? My seat felt locked when I turned. Joshua, no. He looked down. I heard you guys. I wanted to tell him he misunderstood. I wanted to wrap the truth in something soft. But lying would only make him feel crazier. So I said, Daniel made a bad decision with money that was supposed to be for your care. That is not your fault. You are not expensive. You are not a burden. His eyes filled. I don't want everyone fighting because of me. They're not fighting because of you. They're fighting because an adult made a wrong choice. He nodded, but he didn't look relieved. I reached for his hand. I will always make sure you get what you need. His voice was small. Even if people get mad? Especially then. He got out and walked toward the school doors. I watched until he disappeared inside. Then I pulled into the far corner of the parking lot and cried where he couldn't see me. By noon, I was at the bank. I removed Daniel's access from everything I could. I moved the remaining medical money into a new account. I changed my direct deposit. I ordered a new card. The woman helping me was professional and quiet, but when I explained that the account was for my son's medical expenses and someone with access had taken from it, her expression softened. You're doing the right thing by separating it, she said. I nodded because speaking felt impossible. Daniel called while I was still sitting there. I let it ring. Then he texted. So now you're cutting me off financially too? I replied with one sentence. You cut yourself off when you touched Joshua's account. 10 minutes later, he sent. You're choosing your son over our marriage. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed back. You chose a dirt bike over his treatment. I blocked him for the rest of the day. Not forever. Just long enough to get through Friday without another war in my pocket. That night, Joshua slept in my room. He said it was because my room was cooler, but I knew better. He curled up on Daniel's side of the bed and fell asleep with one hand under his cheek. The house was quiet. For the first time in a long time, the quiet didn't feel empty. It felt protected. Friday morning came with barely any sleep. Joshua was quiet during the drive to his appointment. I could tell he wanted to ask questions, but he was trying not to. Every few minutes, he looked at me like he needed to make sure I was still calm. Laura's transfer had cleared. The medication was handled. The clinic balance was paid enough for the appointment to happen. On paper, the crisis had been solved. But nothing felt solved. In the waiting room, Joshua leaned against my shoulder. A little girl across from us was coloring. A TV in the corner played a morning show nobody watched. Everything looked normal, which almost made me angry. It felt wrong that the world could keep moving while my family was falling apart over a bank statement and a dirt bike. When Joshua's name was called, he whispered, "Are we okay?" I said yes. This time, I meant it more than before. After the appointment, I checked my phone in the parking garage. 17 missed messages. 2 from Daniel. 3 from his mother, Carol. 4 from his sister, Jessica. The rest from the family group chat I hadn't opened yet. Joshua buckled himself in, tired but less tense now that the appointment was done. I opened Daniel's messages first. I paid back $900. You need to stop acting like I ruined everything. The second one said, Connor won't talk to me now because of you. Because of me. I leaned my head back against the seat and closed my eyes. Then I opened the group chat. Carol had written a long message about how boys need their fathers to show up for them. She said Connor had been disappointed by his mother too many times and Daniel was only trying to prove he could be counted on. Jessica wrote that I was punishing a child for wanting something special. Then Carol added, Joshua has you. Connor only has Daniel. That one sat in my chest like a stone. Joshua had me because I stayed. Joshua had me because his father, Jason, drifted in and out when it suited him. Jason sent money sometimes, usually after I reminded him 3 times. He made promises that expired the second they became inconvenient. I never used that as permission to take from someone else. I typed one message. The money Daniel used was for Joshua's treatment. Not general savings. Not extra cash. Medical money. I am not discussing this with anyone who thinks that was okay. Jessica replied almost immediately. Nobody said it was okay. But you're acting like he bought himself a boat. I wrote back. He bought silence. He didn't want to disappoint Connor, so he made Joshua pay for it. Nobody answered after that. Joshua shifted beside me. Is Daniel still mad? I locked the phone. That is not something you need to carry. He looked out the window. I don't want Connor to hate me. Connor does not hate you. He probably does. He's hurt and confused. That's different. Joshua swallowed. I didn't ask for all this. I know. I don't want everyone fighting because of me. I took his hand. You do not have to shrink your needs to make other people comfortable. He looked at me, and for a second, he seemed younger than 12. Then he nodded. That night, Daniel came by without warning. I saw his truck pull up and told Joshua to go to his room. I didn't want him hearing another fight. Daniel knocked once and opened the door with his key. Except the chain was on. The door stopped after 2 inches. His face appeared in the gap. Seriously? I said, you don't live here right now. This is my house too. Then you should have treated the people inside it like they mattered. His eyes narrowed. Are you going to let me in or not? No. He looked over my shoulder. Where's Joshua? Not part of this conversation. Daniel laughed bitterly. Of course. I stepped outside and pulled the door closed behind me. The evening air was cool, and I kept my arms folded because my hands were shaking. Daniel looked exhausted. His hair was messy, and he had that rough, unshaven look he got when he wanted sympathy without asking for it. I brought $300, he said, holding up folded bills. I didn't take them right away. Where did it come from? I sold some tools. I took the money. Thank you. He stared at me. That's it? What else do you want? I want my wife to stop treating me like a monster. I put the cash in my pocket. I don't think you're a monster. Could have fooled me. I think you made a selfish decision and used Connor's feelings to protect yourself from the consequences. He shook his head. You keep saying that like I planned to hurt Joshua. I don't think you planned to hurt him. I think you decided his hurt was manageable. Daniel looked away. For the first time, I saw something like shame on his face. I said, did you tell Connor where the money came from? His jaw flexed. He's a kid. He's old enough to think I hate him because you let him believe that. I didn't want him to feel guilty. You wanted him angry at me instead. His eyes snapped back to mine. That's not fair. Is it wrong? He didn't answer. A car passed slowly down the street. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked. It was such an ordinary night for such an ugly conversation. Daniel rubbed both hands over his face. I messed up. Yes. I panicked. Diane backed out again, and Connor was sitting in my truck trying not to cry. He said he was tired of everyone promising him things and then forgetting him. I wanted to fix it. I could picture it. Connor trying to act tough while feeling unwanted. Daniel sitting there, guilty and desperate to be the parent who finally came through. But wanting to fix one child's pain did not give him the right to gamble with another child's care. You could have come home and told me that, I said. You could have asked to make a plan. You could have taken him somewhere, talked to him, saved up, bought a cheaper gift, told him the truth. You had choices. Daniel's voice cracked. I know. Then why did you pick the one that required hiding it from me? He looked down. The answer was clear. Because he knew I would say no. He asked if he could see Joshua. I said no. His face hardened. He's my stepson. And you can write him an apology first. You're serious? Yes. Not a defensive apology. Not, I'm sorry your mom is upset. A real one. You tell him what you did was wrong and that his care is not a burden. Daniel looked stunned. He thinks that. He asked me if his appointment was canceled because he's too expensive. The color drained from his face. For once, he didn't argue. He whispered, I didn't mean for that. I know. But it happened. His eyes were wet, and I hated that part of me still wanted to comfort him. Love doesn't disappear the second trust breaks. It stays injured, reaching for habits that no longer feel safe. Daniel asked if we could do counseling. I said maybe, but not so you can move back in faster. He nodded. Then he said, what about Connor? What about him? You can't just cut him off. I didn't. He thinks you did. Then tell him the truth. Daniel looked toward the house. I don't know how to fix this. That was the most honest thing he had said all week. I said, start by not making me the villain in a story you wrote. He left after that. The next few days were quiet in a way that felt suspicious. Daniel sent money in pieces. 200. 150. Another 400 after he sold something else. He told me he was trying to sell the dirt bike, but Connor was refusing to speak to him. Then Connor texted me. Did Dad really use Joshua's medical money? I stared at the message for a long time. There was no painless answer. Daniel had already hurt him by lying. Softening the truth now would only keep the lie alive. So I wrote, "Yes, I'm sorry you found out this way. You did nothing wrong. You were given something by an adult you trusted. This is not your fault." He didn't reply for almost an hour. Then he sent, "I didn't know." I wrote, "I know." A minute later. I wouldn't have taken it. I had to put the phone down. Because I believed him. Connor could be moody. He could be rude. He could act like every adult in the room was personally embarrassing him. But he was not cruel. I wrote back, "I believe you." That night, Daniel called. His voice sounded wrecked. "Connor knows." I figured. He wants me to sell the bike. What did you tell him? The truth. All of it. Daniel was quiet. Then he said enough. I almost corrected him, but I was tired. Enough was more than he had done before. The bike sold 3 days later for less than Daniel paid. He was angry about the loss, but he didn't say that to me. Maybe he was learning. Maybe he just knew I didn't care. Between the sale, the tools, and his next paycheck, the account was fully repaid 11 days after the pharmacy. I paid Laura back first. She tried to refuse, but I sent it anyway with a message that said, "Thank you for keeping me standing." She replied, "Always." Daniel asked to come home the same night the final transfer cleared. I told him no. He called immediately. "Rebecca, I paid it back." "I know. So what now?" "Now we figure out what kind of marriage we have left." He was silent. Then he said, "I did what you asked." "No. You replaced the money. That was the minimum. You're moving the goalpost." "I'm not. You just thought the money was the only damage." He started to argue, then stopped. That was new. A week later, we met in a quiet coffee shop because I didn't want him at the house yet. He looked smaller somehow. Not physically. Just less certain of himself. He gave me a folded letter for Joshua. I read it before I gave it to my son. It said he was sorry for taking money that was meant for Joshua's care. It said Joshua was never too expensive. It said adults are supposed to protect children, and he failed him. It did not blame me. It did not mention Connor. It did not ask for forgiveness. For the first time, my anger loosened a little. Not disappeared. Just loosened. I gave the letter to Joshua that evening. He read it alone in his room. When he came out, he handed it back to me. Do I have to forgive him? No. Can I later? Yes. Can I not know yet? I hugged him. That's allowed. Connor came over 2 Saturdays later. Not for the whole weekend. Just for an hour. Daniel drove him, but he stayed in the truck. Connor came to the door with his hands in his hoodie pocket and his eyes on the ground. I opened the door. "Hi." He said, "Hi." Neither of us moved for a second. Then he said, "I'm sorry I texted you that you hated me." I shook my head. "You were hurt." I still shouldn't have said it. "Thank you." He swallowed. "I didn't know about Joshua's account." "I know." He looked past me, toward the hallway. "Is he here?" "Yes." "Does he hate me?" "No." Connor nodded, but his face was tight. Joshua came out a minute later. He stood behind me at first, nervous and pale. Connor looked even more nervous. Then Connor said, "I'm sorry about the bike." Joshua shrugged. "You didn't steal the money." Connor's mouth twitched like he almost smiled, but didn't know if he was allowed. They stood there awkwardly until Joshua said, "Do you want to see this game I've been playing?" Connor said, "Sure." And just like that, they went to the living room. Not healed. Not fixed. But not broken forever either. I stayed in the kitchen where I could hear their voices without hovering. Daniel texted from the driveway. "Thank you for letting him come in." I didn't answer right away. Part of me wanted to say something sharp. Part of me wanted to say I missed him. Both things were true, and neither felt useful. So I wrote, "This was for them." He replied, "I know." I hoped he did. It has been almost 2 months now. Daniel still lives with his brother, Philip. We have started counseling, but slowly. I told him I wasn't promising reconciliation. I was promising honesty. That is all I have right now. The medical account is still separate. Daniel has no access. No one does but me. I don't apologize for that. Joshua is doing better. Not perfect, but better. He asks fewer scared questions now. He still keeps the pharmacy receipts in a drawer, which I only found because I was putting away laundry. I asked him why. He said, "I just like knowing they're paid." That sentence hurt, but it also reminded me why I did what I did. Connor comes over sometimes. Not every weekend. He and Joshua are careful around each other, but they're trying. Connor apologized to Joshua in his own stiff teenage way, and Joshua accepted it without making a big thing out of it. Daniel has apologized more than once. Some apologies were good. Some still sounded like he wanted comfort for feeling guilty. I don't give him that anymore. Carol hasn't apologized. Jessica sent one text that said she didn't have all the information. That was as close as she got. Diane eventually found out the whole story and called Daniel irresponsible. That would have meant more if her broken promise hadn't helped create the mess. Still, hearing someone besides me say it was wrong felt like a small relief. People keep asking me what I'm going to do. The honest answer is I don't fully know. Some days, I miss the version of my marriage I thought I had. I miss making dinner while Daniel talked about his day. I miss seeing his truck in the driveway and feeling like another adult was coming home to help carry the weight. Other days, I remember standing in that pharmacy with my card declined and my son's medication behind the counter, and missing him feels impossible. I did not kick Daniel out because he loved Connor. I kicked him out because he used my love for both boys against me. He counted on me being too guilty to fight back. He thought if he made it about Connor's pain, I would ignore where the money came from. I can care about Connor and still protect Joshua. I can understand Daniel's guilt and still hold him responsible. I can love someone and still lock the door when they become unsafe for my child. The house is quieter now. Not happy exactly. Just calmer. Joshua sleeps better. I sleep better. The medical account is rebuilding. The next appointment is already paid for. Sometimes calm feels like victory when chaos was all you knew. I don't know if Daniel and I will survive this. Maybe counseling will show there is something worth repairing. Maybe it will only teach us how to end things without destroying the boys more than we already have. But for the first time in years, I'm not making that decision from fear. I'm making it from the place I should have been standing all along, next to my son. So did I go too far by kicking my husband out and refusing to let him come home after he used my son's treatment money to buy his son a dirt bike, or was that the only line I had left to draw?